The research vessel New Dawn shook violently as it crashed through the thick atmosphere of planet Kethfer. Inside the cockpit, Dr. Kim Hyen gripped his seat as warning lights flashed red all around him. The ship's computer voice kept repeating the same message over and over. Hull breach detected. Life support failing. Emergency landing required. Hyen tried to steer the ship toward a flat area he could see through the cracked front window, but the controls were not responding properly. The ground was rushing up fast. Trees with strange purple leaves and glowing orange bark filled his vision. Then everything went black dot when Hyen woke up. He could not move his left arm, and his head felt like someone was hitting it with a hammer. Smoke was filling the cockpit, and he could smell something burning. The front window was completely shattered, and pieces of glass covered everything. His emergency suit had protected him from the worst damage, but he could see that the suit's oxygen tank was cracked and leaking. He tried to radio for help, but the communication system was dead. The ship's main power was off, and the backup batteries would not last long. Worse, he could see strange red spores floating in through the broken window. According to his research files, these spores were deadly to humans. His suit's filters would only protect him for a few more hours. Hyen managed to activate one small emergency beacon, but he did not know if it was working. Even if it was, the rescue ships were weeks away. He would be dead long before they arrived. The toxic spores were already making him feel sick and dizzy. For 3 days, Hyen drifted in and out of sleep. His water ran out on the second day. The emergency food packets made him throw up because of the poison in the air. He was getting weaker and weaker. By the 3rd day, he could barely open his eyes. That was when he heard the strange musical sounds outside his ship. Through the broken window, Hyen saw the most unusual creatures he had ever encountered. They looked like small humans, but their skin was made of what appeared to be living crystal. When they moved, their bodies made soft chiming sounds like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. They were only about 4 feet tall, with large eyes that sparkled like diamonds. The creatures seemed very excited and worried when they saw him. They chattered to each other in voices that sounded like tiny bells ringing. One of them, who seemed to be their leader, stepped closer to the ship. This one had brighter crystals on its forehead and made slightly deeper chiming sounds when it spoke. The leader pointed at Hoon and then at the other creatures. It was clear they wanted to help, but Hoon was too weak to move. He tried to wave at them, but his hand barely moved. The creatures understood anyway. What happened next amazed Hyen. The small beings worked together to carefully remove pieces of the broken ship. They had only simple tools made of stone and wood, but they were very clever about how they used them. They made ramps and levers to lift heavy pieces without dropping them on Hyen. It took them most of the day to create an opening big enough to reach him. The leader, who Hyen decided to call Veltar after hearing the sounds the others made when speaking to it, crawled into the cockpit. Veltar looked at Hyen's broken arm and made worried chiming sounds. The creature pulled out a small container made from some kind of plant material. Inside was clear water. Veltar helped Hyen drink it slowly, making sure he did not choke. The water tasted strange, but good, and Hyen felt a little stronger after drinking it. More creatures arrived with different supplies. They brought soft materials that looked like moss, but felt like silk. They used these to make a bed for Hyen outside the crashed ship. They also brought strange crystals that glowed with warm light. When they placed these crystals near he noticed that his headache got better, and his broken arm hurt less. The creatures took turns watching over him day and night. They shared their water, even though Hyen could see they did not have very much. They brought him fruits that were safe for him to eat, somehow knowing which ones would not make him sick. They cleaned his wounds and changed his bandages, using strips of soft plant fiber. Veltar stayed with Hyen most of the time, making soft musical sounds that seemed meant to comfort him. Even though they could not understand each other's languages, Hyen felt that Veltar was trying to tell him that everything would be okay. Days passed slowly. The creatures continued to care for Hayan, never asking for anything in return. They used their healing crystals to fight the poison in his system. They made him simple but nutritious meals from local plants. They even figured out how to repair his emergency beacon, using their crystal technology in ways that Hayan did not understand, but clearly worked. 3 weeks after the crash, Hayan heard the sound of human ships in the sky above. The rescue fleet had finally arrived. As the medics loaded him onto a stretcher, Hayan looked back at Veltar and the other creatures who had saved his life. He tried to say thank you, but the words seemed too small for what they had done. These beings had risked everything to save a complete stranger from another world, expecting nothing in return. 6 months after his rescue from Kethfer, Dr. Kim Hyun sat in the bright white meeting room at Earth's Space Command headquarters. Around the long table sat 20 of the most important people in human space exploration. Admiral Park Sung, the head of Earth's military forces, was reading Hayan's official report for the 3rd time. Hayan had written every detail he could remember about his time with the Kethfari. He described how they shared their precious water when they clearly had very little. He explained how they used their healing crystals to save his life, even though helping an alien was completely new to them. He wrote about how they worked day and night to fix his emergency beacon without being asked. These creatures had never seen a human before, Hayan told the room. They had no idea if I was dangerous or peaceful. But when they found me dying in that crashed ship, they did not hesitate. They gave up their own safety to help a complete stranger. General Lee Minho, a stern man with gray hair, looked up from the report. This is all very touching, Dr. Kim. But we have bigger problems to worry about than your grateful feelings toward some primitive aliens. The general pressed a button, and a large screen appeared on the wall. It showed a map of the Kethfer solar system. Red dots marked the positions of many alien spaceships gathering at the edge of the system. 3 days ago, our deep space sensors detected something that changes everything, General Lee continued. The planet Kethfer contains the largest deposits of trilithium ever discovered. This mineral is essential for faster-than-light travel. Every major civilization in the galaxy wants to control it. Hyun felt his stomach drop. Trilithium was more valuable than gold, diamonds, and rare metals combined. Without it, no spaceship could travel between star systems. The alien powers would do anything to get their hands on such a large supply. The hegemony has already sent 12 battle fleets toward Kethfer, said Commander Oh Soyoung, the intelligence officer. The Syndicate Corporation is offering to buy the entire planet from us, even though we have no legal claim to it. The Veltar Empire wants to negotiate mining rights. Everyone assumes the Kethfari are too primitive to understand what they are. Sitting on, Admiral Park Sung-min had been quiet during the meeting, but now he looked directly at Hayan. Doctor, in your professional opinion, do the Kethfari understand the value of what is under their planet? No, Sir, Hayan replied honestly. They use simple tools made of stone and wood. They have no concept of space travel or galactic politics. They live in small villages and spend their time growing food and making art from crystals. They have no idea that alien fleets are gathering to fight over their world. Then they cannot defend themselves, the Admiral said quietly. Absolutely not, General Lee interrupted. The hegemony battle fleets could destroy their entire civilization in one afternoon. The Syndicate would relocate them to some desert planet and strip mine Kethfer until nothing was left. These aliens have no protection against that kind of power. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. In a few weeks, maybe a few days, the peaceful creatures who had saved Hayan's life would face the most dangerous military forces in the galaxy. The Kethfari would not even understand what was happening until it was too late. Hyun cleared his throat. Admiral, I want to request that Earth intervene to protect the Kethfari people. Several people around the table laughed. General Lee shook his head. Dr. Kim, I understand you feel grateful to these creatures. But Earth has 27 ships in our entire deep space fleet. The hegemony has over 300. We cannot fight the entire galaxy over one planet, no matter how we feel about its inhabitants. But we owe them, Hoon said, his voice getting stronger. They saved my life when they had every reason to let me die. They used up their own water to keep me alive. They spent weeks taking care of me, without asking for anything in return. Does that mean nothing? Admiral Park Sung-min was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the star map on the screen, then at Hyen's report, then at the faces around the table. Everyone could see he was thinking hard about something. General Lee, how long do we have before the first alien fleets reach Kethver? The Admiral asked. Intelligence suggests 2 weeks, maybe 3 at the most. The Admiral stood up slowly. Hyon could see that he was remembering something from his past, something that made his expression very serious. When I was 7 years old, Admiral Park said quietly, my family's transport ship crashed on a mining colony. We were trapped in the wreckage for 6 days. The miners who rescued us were complete strangers who risked their lives to save people they had never met. They had no reason to help us, but they did it anyway, because it was the right thing to do. He looked around the room, at all the officers and officials. Dr. Kim is correct. We owe these creatures a debt that cannot be measured in money or politics. They proved that kindness exists in this universe, even between species who cannot speak the same language. If we abandon them now, we abandon everything that makes us human. The Admiral's voice became firm and commanding. Admiral Park Sung-min stood on the bridge of his flagship Soul's Pride as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kethver system. Through the main view screen, he could see what they were up against. 12 massive hegemony warships, hung in space above the peaceful blue-green planet like dark metal storms waiting to strike. Each hegemony dreadnought was 3 times larger than any ship in Sung-min's fleet. Their black hulls were covered with weapon ports that could destroy cities with single shots. The Admiral counted the forces under his command. 23 ships total, most of them smaller cruisers and destroyers. His crews were brave and well-trained, but they had never faced odds like this. Admiral, the hegemony fleet commander is requesting communication, reported Lieutenant Kim Junho from the communications station. Put him through, Sung-min replied. Straightening his uniform, the view screen flickered and showed the face of hegemony war leader Crexton. The alien looked like a giant lizard with metal implants covering half his skull. His yellow eyes showed no emotion as he spoke in heavily accented human language. Human Admiral, you are in violation of hegemony territorial claims. Remove your pathetic ships immediately, or we will remove them for you. Sung-min stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. War Leader Crexton, this world is under Earth's protection. The people here saved the life of one of our citizens. We will not abandon them. Crexton made a sound that might have been laughter. 23 human ships against 12 hegemony dreadnoughts. You cannot be serious. Your entire species is known for building decent cargo vessels, not warships. Leave now, and we will pretend this embarrassing display never happened. I am completely serious, Sung-min replied calmly. These people showed kindness to a stranger who needed help. That kindness will be protected. The alien's expression changed to one of disgust. Then you will die for your foolish sentiment. All ships, attack formation. Destroy the human fleet. The communication ended, and the hegemony ships began moving toward Earth's forces. Their weapon systems powered up, creating an orange glow around each massive vessel. All ships. This is Admiral Park, Sung-min announced on the fleet channel. Today we fight not for territory or resources, but for something more important. We fight to prove that good deeds matter in this universe. Every person who ever helped a stranger is counting on us. Do not let them down. The first shots came from the hegemony flagship. Beams of pure energy lanced across space toward the human formation. Captain Lee So-young, commanding the destroyer Inchin, tried to dodge, but the beam caught her ship directly. The engine exploded instantly, taking all hands with it. "Return fire," Sungmin ordered. "All ships, attack pattern Delta." The human fleet spread out and began firing their smaller weapons at the alien dreadnoughts. Their shots looked like tiny sparks against the massive enemy ships. The hegemony vessels continued their advance, their heavy guns tearing through human shields and armor like paper. The cruiser Busan took a direct hit that killed half her crew. The destroyer Daejeon lost her main engines and began drifting helplessly. 2 more human ships exploded under the concentrated firepower of the alien fleet. "Admiral, we cannot hold this position much longer," reported his tactical officer. "We have lost 5 ships, and the others are heavily damaged." Sungmin watched as another hegemony beam barely missed his own bridge. His ship shook from near misses and his crew worked frantically to keep the weapons and shields operational. "Sir, we should retreat," suggested Commander Park Min. "We can regroup and call for reinforcements." But Sungmin was thinking about Dr. Kim Hyen's report. He was remembering how the small crystalline beings had shared their water and used their healing crystals on a dying alien. They had not retreated when things became difficult. They had not given up when the odds were against them. "No retreat," he said firmly. "Signal Dr. Kim Hyun. Tell him to begin broadcasting his story on all frequencies. Every ship, every planet, every communication relay in the galaxy needs to hear what happened on Kethfer." As the human fleet continued to fight the hopeless battle, Dr. Hyen's voice began transmitting across space. He told the story of his crash and rescue in simple, clear words. He described how beings with primitive tools had worked for days to save his life. He explained how they had given up their own water and food to keep a stranger alive. The transmissions spread through the galaxy's communication networks like wildfire. On distant planets, people stopped what they were doing to listen. In space, stations and cargo ships, crews gathered around their radios. Even some of the hegemony ships received the broadcast. "This is Dr. Kim Hyun of Earth," his voice said over the static. "I am telling you about creatures who proved that kindness exists between the stars. They saved my life not because they had to, but because they chose to. They asked for nothing in return. Now, powerful forces want to destroy them for the minerals under their planet. I ask you to remember that some things are more valuable than lithium. Some things are worth protecting even when the odds are impossible." The battered human fleet continued firing their small weapons at the giant alien ships. They had no chance of winning, but they refused to give up. Below them, the peaceful Kethvari went about their daily lives, unaware that strangers were dying in space to protect them. Dr. Kim Hyen's voice echoed across the galaxy as his transmission spread from ship to ship, planet to planet. In the depths of space, alien crews stopped their work to listen to the simple story of kindness and sacrifice. The broadcast reached mining stations, trading posts, military bases, and peaceful colonies scattered among the stars. On the water world of Medanos, Captain Valandra was loading cargo when her communication officer called her to the bridge. The tall, blue-skinned Madani listened to Hyen's story with growing amazement. She had lived for 300 years and traveled to countless worlds, but she had never heard of one species risking everything to save another without any hope of reward. "Prepare the ship for immediate departure," Valandra ordered her crew. "Set course for the Kethver system." "Captain, that system is in hegemony territory," her first officer warned. "If we interfere, we could start a war." Valandra looked at the star charts, showing the distant location of Kethver. "Some things are worth risking war for," she said quietly. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. On the trading station New Babylon, the ancient Veltar merchant Prince Zeekthon heard the broadcast while negotiating a business deal. The Veltar were known throughout space as beings who valued honor above profit, but even they rarely risked their lives for strangers. Zeekthon immediately canceled all his business meetings and began sending messages to every Veltar ship captain. He knew, within hours, 17 Veltar vessels were racing toward Kethver at maximum speed. The broadcast even reached some of the hegemony ships that were attacking the human fleet. On the dreadnought Iron Fist, Commander Vextar listened to Hyan's words, while his ship fired on the small human vessels. Vextar was a career military officer who had fought in dozens of battles. But something about this story made him uncomfortable. He remembered his own homeworld, destroyed by raiders when he was young. Strangers had found him in the ruins and taken care of him until hegemony forces arrived. Those strangers had saved his life for no reason other than kindness. "Weapons officer, hold fire," Vextar ordered suddenly. "Sir." His weapons officer looked confused. "I said hold fire. Do not shoot at the human ships." Back in the human fleet, Admiral Park Sung-min watched his tactical display as more enemy ships stopped firing. He did not understand what was happening, but he was grateful for any break in the battle. His fleet was badly damaged and many good people had already died. "Admiral, we are detecting new ships entering the system," reported Lieutenant Kim Jun-ho. "Multiple vessels coming in from different directions. The first to arrive were the Veltar ships, their silver hulls gleaming as they took position alongside the battered human fleet." Captain Zik then opened a communication channel to Admiral Park. "Human Admiral, I am Captain Zikthon of the Veltar Merchant Fleet. We have heard the story of the crystal beings who saved your people. The Veltar believe that honor requires us to protect those who show such kindness." More ships continued to arrive every few minutes. The Madani bioships, looking like giant sea creatures made of living metal, positioned themselves between the human fleet and the hegemony forces. Their ships pulsed with bioluminescent lights that somehow managed to communicate peaceful intentions, even in the middle of a battle. The insectoid hive clans sent a swarm of smaller vessels that moved in perfect coordination. The rocky Siltherin brought their massive fortress ships that looked like floating asteroids. Even the energy beings known as the Luminari sent their crystal vessels, which seemed to be made of pure light. What amazed Admiral Park the most was that these species had been enemies with each other for centuries. The Veltar and Madani had fought 3 wars over trading rights. The hive clans considered most other species to be inferior creatures. The Siltherin rarely left their home system for anything, but now they were all here, standing together, to protect a world full of primitive beings they had never met. War Leader Crexton watched his tactical display with growing alarm as more and more ships arrived to defend Kethver. His 12 dreadnoughts were now facing over 200 vessels from dozens of different species. Even worse, some of his own ships had stopped following orders. "This is madness," Crexton muttered to himself. "They are risking everything for creatures who cannot even build spaceships." But the galaxy had made its choice. Hyan's simple story about beings who shared their water with a dying stranger had touched something universal. Species that had never worked together before were now united by a common understanding. Some things were sacred, and kindness was one of them. Captain Omin Jun, commanding the human supply ship, Daegu stared out his viewports at the incredible sight. Ships of every possible design floated in space around Kethver, their weapons trained on the hegemony fleet. Some looked like sea creatures, others like geometric crystals, and still others like living trees growing in space. "I have never seen anything like this," Minjun whispered to his crew. "The whole galaxy is here." On his flagship, Admiral Park felt tears in his eyes as he realized what was happening. The small act of kindness shown by the Kethvari had created something unprecedented in galactic history. For the first time ever, dozens of different species were working together, not for profit or conquest, but simply because it was the right thing to do. The defense of Kethver had become something much larger than anyone had expected. It had become proof that goodness could triumph over greed, and that the universe still had room for heroes. 1 year after the great battle that never happened. Dr. Kim Hyun walked through the crystal gardens of Kethver with a feeling of wonder that had never faded. Above him, the sky sparkled with the lights of ships from 43 different worlds, all keeping their silent watch over this small, peaceful planet. The hegemony fleet had retreated without firing another shot once they saw the massive coalition that had formed to protect the Kethvari. War leader Crexton had sent a final message, saying that even the hegemony would not fight the entire galaxy over one world. The Syndicate Corporation had quietly withdrawn their mining claims after facing boycotts from dozens of species who refused to do business with them. Now, Kethver had become something unique in the galaxy, a world protected not by military might or political treaties, but by the simple power of a good example. Hyun stopped beside a cluster of singing crystals that the Kethvari had grown in the shape of his crashed ship. It was their way of remembering the day that changed everything, though they still did not fully understand what had happened in the space above their world. To them, it was simply the time when many sky visitors had come to trade and learn. Dr. Kim called, a familiar chiming voice behind him. Hyun turned to see Veltar approaching through the crystal grove. The young Kethvari had grown taller over the past year, and the crystals on her forehead now glowed with a deeper blue light that indicated wisdom among her people. She had become something like an ambassador, learning to use the translation devices that visiting aliens brought. "Hello, Veltar," Hyun said with a smile. "How are your people today?" "We are well," she replied, her voice making soft musical notes even through the translator. "But I have a question that puzzles many of us. Why do so many different sky visitors come to our world now? We see ships that look like sea creatures, and others that seem made of light itself. Some visitors have scales, others have fur, and some appear to be made of living rock. What brings such different beings to our simple planet?" Hayan looked up at the evening sky, where the lights of the great defense fleet twinkled like new constellations. Ships from the Veltar Empire floated next to vessels from the Madani depths. Hegemony deserters worked alongside Hive Clan warriors who had once been their enemies. It was the most diverse military force in galactic history, all held together by a shared commitment to protecting innocence. "They come because of what you did for me," Hyun explained gently. "When you found me dying in my crashed ship, you could have walked away. I was a strange creature from another world, and helping me put your own people at risk. But you chose to help anyway, not because you had to, but because you believed it was right." Veltar tilted her crystalline head, making soft chiming sounds of confusion. "But that is simply what anyone would do. You were hurt and needed help. How could we do anything else?" "That is exactly why they are here," Hyun said. "Most species in the galaxy have forgotten how to help strangers without expecting something in return. Wars are fought for profit, alliances are made for power, and kindness is seen as weakness. But you and your people proved that real goodness still exists. You showed the galaxy what we could all be if we chose compassion over greed." Behind them, Admiral Park Sungmin approached with slow, careful steps. The old military commander had retired after the Kethver incident, but he often returned to visit the world his fleet had helped protect. He walked with a cane now, a reminder of injuries suffered in the brief battle with the hegemony forces. Admiral Park Veltar chimed happily. She had become fond of the quiet human who always brought small gifts of earth flowers for her garden. "Good evening, young ambassador," Sungmin replied with a gentle smile. "I hope you do not mind an old soldier joining your conversation." Dr. Kim was explaining why so many sky visitors protect our world, Veltar said. "But I still do not understand why one small act of kindness could matter so much to beings we had never met." Admiral Park sat down carefully on a crystal bench that the Kethvari had grown specifically for their human visitors. His weathered face showed the wisdom of someone who had seen both the best and worst that the galaxy had to offer. "Young one," he said softly, "most of the galaxy runs on fear, greed, and power. Species conquer each other for resources, They fight wars over territory they do not need. They treat kindness as something foolish and weak. But deep in their hearts, they remember when kindness was shown to them. They remember being helped by strangers, or they wish they had been. The Admiral looked up at the defense fleet hanging in the darkening sky. When your people saved Dr. Kim, you did something that most of the galaxy thought was impossible. You proved that beings could help each other without wanting anything in return. You showed that compassion was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. Every ship up there represents someone who remembered what it felt like to need help, or who wished they could be as brave and good as you were. Veltar was quiet for a long moment, her crystalline body making soft musical tones as she thought about this explanation. So they stay to protect us because we reminded them of something they had forgotten? She asked finally. Yes, Hyun said simply. You reminded the entire galaxy that goodness is real, and that it is worth protecting. Above them, the lights of 100 different worlds continued their eternal watch, proof that sometimes the smallest act of kindness could reshape the universe itself.